All right, let's talk about the European Commission. It's a name you hear all the time when it comes to the EU, and it's often described as its executive arm. But what does that actually mean? What do they do all day? And how is this whole thing put together? Well, we're about to dive in and break it all down.
So, here's what we're going to tackle today. We're going to break down the Commission's role, get a grip on how it's organized, and understand the core principles that guide everything it does. By the time we're done, you'll have a really solid picture of this key EU institution.
Okay, first things first. What is the European Commission? At its heart, it's the executive body of the European Union. Think of it like this. It's the engine room of the EU, responsible for the day-to-day business, making sure decisions get carried out, and upholding the EU's founding treaties.
Here's our game plan. We'll start with the Commission's key roles. Then we'll look at how it's organized. After that, we'll check out its guiding principles. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a quick summary. Simple as that.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Commission's key roles. This is really the core of what it's all about, what the Commission actually does for the EU.
So, the Commission wears a lot of hats. I mean, just look at this list. They're the ones proposing new laws and policies. They keep an eye on how those laws are being implemented. They manage the entire EU budget, which is a huge job. They also make sure everyone's following the rules, negotiate big international deals, hand out funding, and on top of all that, they represent the EU's interests all around the world. It's a massive portfolio of responsibilities.
Okay, let's zoom in on proposing laws because this is a huge deal. The Commission has what's called the right of initiative. Now, what that means is they're pretty much the only ones who can kickstart the whole process of creating a new EU law. This power is absolutely crucial because it lets them set the agenda, shape the EU's big picture strategy, and react to new challenges as they pop up.
But it's not just about coming up with new ideas. The Commission also has to make sure things actually get done. They have major management duties. They're like the project managers for the EU, overseeing how policies are put into practice in all the member states. Plus, they're in charge of the money, managing the EU budget and deciding where all that funding goes.
And then there's the international stage. The Commission acts as the EU's chief negotiator. When the EU needs to hash out a trade deal or a cooperation agreement with a country outside the Union, it's the Commission that sits at the table. This is super important because it means the EU can speak with one powerful, unified voice, instead of 27 different ones.
Okay, so we know what they do. Now for the how. Let's get into Section 2 and peel back the layers on how the Commission is actually structured to handle all those jobs.
So at the very top, you have the political leadership. This is a group called the College of Commissioners. It's made up of 27 people, one from each EU member state. Think of them as the board of directors. They're the ones steering the ship, and they make all their big decisions as a team. It's all about collective responsibility.
And leading that college is the Commission president. You can think of the president as the CEO. They set the overall political direction and hand out specific jobs or portfolios to each of the other commissioners. So one might be in charge of trade, another for climate, and so on. These priorities really set the tone for the Commission's entire 5-year term.
Okay, so below the political leaders, you've got this huge administrative machine that does the day-to-day work. It's basically broken down into 3 main parts. Policy departments, which are called directorates general, then you have service departments, and finally, executive agencies.
Let's talk about those directorates general, or DGs for short. These are the real workhorses. They're basically the equivalent of government ministries. Each DG focuses on a specific area, like agriculture, energy, or the environment. They're the experts who actually develop and draft the new laws and manage the policies in their field.
Then you have the executive agencies. These guys have a much more specific, focused job. They're set up for a limited time to manage a particular program for the Commission. Think of them as special project teams brought in to handle things like a big research initiative or a new education program.
And the Commission isn't just in Brussels. It has offices all over the place. Inside the EU, there are representation offices in every member country, kind of like local information hubs. And outside the EU, you have EU delegations, which act a lot like embassies, representing the EU's interests across the globe.
Okay, we've seen what the Commission does and how it's built. Now let's move on to Section 3 and talk about the rules of the road, the guiding principles that shape how all this work gets done.
So the Commission doesn't just do its work any old way. It's committed to a set of core principles. We're talking about things like transparency, being ethical, ensuring equal opportunities, and embracing multilingualism.
And on top of that, it's pushing for digital transformation and trying to be greener in its own operations.
Let's take transparency, for example. How does that work in practice? Well, for one, they run public consultations, so you and I can give our opinions before they even propose a law. They also have a transparency register, so you can see which interest groups are talking to them. And they make a ton of documents available to the public. It's all about working out in the open.
Ethics is another big one, and this isn't just a suggestion. There are specific rules and codes of conduct in place. These rules apply to everyone, from the politically appointed commissioners at the top all the way down to the permanent staff. The goal is to make sure everything is done with integrity and for the right reasons.
You know, the commission is also a massive employer, so it has to think about how it treats its people. It has a whole HR strategy focused on being a modern workplace. The idea is to attract the best talent from all over the EU and create an environment where they can build a career, one that's ready for whatever challenges come next.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's hit our final section and do a quick recap of the most important takeaways.
So, what are the key things to remember? First, the Commission is the EU's executive arm. It gets things done. Second, its job is huge, proposing laws, managing the money, and acting as the guardian of EU law. Third, it's led by a team of 27 commissioners, one from each country, with a whole organization underneath them. And finally, everything it does is guided by core principles like transparency and ethics. That's the Commission in a nutshell.
This educational module is part of a structured series on the European Union. Additional modules covering other EU topics can be found in the designated playlist.